Emotions are running high after a recent tariff announcement by Donald Trump. Dubbed by many as an unnecessary start to a trade war, the 25% tariff for Canada in particular, one of U.S.'s closest allies and importers, created a rift between the two countries and could further strain not only their economic but also diplomatic relations. In light of those events, could Canada get closer to the EU? Joining me now is Roland Paris, professor of international affairs, University of Ottawa, and former advisor to Canada's Prime Minister. Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
In their latest article, The Economist said, I quote, "Europe needs space and resources, Canada needs people. Let's deal." Is there a realistic chance that Canada at any point in time could join the EU?
I think it's very unlikely that Canada would become a member of the EU, but there's no question that part of the effects of having been targeted by Donald Trump's economic attack is that in Canada, there almost certainly will be a big push to try to deepen and expand Canada's trade relationships outside of North America. And Europe is already a very important trading partner for Canada, and I would expect that there'll be a push to try and expand Canadian exports to Europe, including energy and resources.
So could you elaborate on that? Because if not the membership, and we're looking at this trade, tightening of the trade ties, which ones would those be, especially in case of energy?
Well, Canada can't detach itself from North America, nor would it want to. Its top priority is to resume cooperative relations with the United States, because the economic relationship and the political relationship and even the people-to-people relationship is so deep. This, isn't going to disappear overnight. Certainly, that's Canada's top priority. But when it comes to exporting more from Canada, there's two challenges. One is, of course, to identify the partners, and we already have extensive negotiations taking place in the Indo-Pacific region. We're members of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and in Europe, we have the CETA. And so those are fantastic platforms to build on. The other challenge for Canada is to build more infrastructure in order to move more of our resources to those markets.
But do you think that Canada has gone beyond the point of no return when it comes to the relationship with the U.S., or is there still some space for discussion?
Oh, there's absolutely space for discussion. I mean, there are plenty of people within the U.S. Political system that continue to value the relationship with Canada, and there are plenty of companies in the United States, including many that were speaking up when Trump was threatening his 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico, that urged him not to do so. So, the relationship has taken a pretty serious hit, and there has been a loss of some trust. But it's much too deep a relationship to think that it's been disrupted for good. And I would expect that there'll be efforts to try and find ways to work with the Trump White House, and perhaps as his attention turns to other issues in other parts of the world.
We've heard about the tariffs, 25% for Canada, 25% for Mexico, and 10% for China. We've also heard from President Donald Trump saying that Europe is going to be next. We are Europe is expecting some tariffs. But do you think that Canada could actually fill out some gaps if the U.S.-EU relationship was to worsen? And what actually both of these sides bilaterally have to offer each other?
Well, I think that if we got to a point where both the EU and Canada were subject to, really punishing tariffs by the United States, then I think that there would be a real conversation to have about how the EU and Canada can work together to think about how to deal with that challenge and how to try to overcome that kind of serious impediment to both of their economies. But, in the near term, we all just have to remember that Donald Trump, he doesn't think about the world in terms of friends or adversaries. Everything is a deal. I presumably thought that threatening these tariffs against Canada would put him in a better negotiating position what it ended up doing was stimulating a nationalist response in Canada and really making Canadians very determined to resist what they interpreted as an attack on Canada's economy and sovereignty.
If Canada was to focus more on cooperation with Europe and with the situation with the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine and with defense issues that the EU is dealing, do you think that Canada could actually provide more support to the European Union and aid for Ukraine?
Well, Canada already provides an enormous amount of financial support for Ukraine and and also a significant amount of military support, although we have less material to give to the effort. So,
but I mean, taking an
Canada is already taking an extra step. Well, right now, there's a great deal of attention right now on the possibility of a body blow to the Canadian economy. And if there were to be 25% tariffs leveled against Canada, then this would be an economic emergency. I think that Canada will absolutely continue to support Ukraine politically, financially, militarily, and maintain our support for NATO and increase military spending. That's going to happen. But I think a lot of the attention will be on the very dire economic implications of 25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States and trying to deal with that crisis if should it happen.
What lessons do you think that the EU can learn from Canada when it comes to that announcement about the tariffs and the international relations and the foreign policy by the US?
Well, it's really hard to draw many lessons from interactions with Donald Trump because he's so unpredictable. And he can react to things that other leaders might not react to and ignore things that other leaders might not ignore. But I think that one thing that happened here was that Donald Trump was not just threatening and went right to the very last moment to implement 25% sanctions, tariffs against Canadian imports. He was also linking that to saying over and over again that he thought that Canada should be the 51st state and that maybe he would use economic force to try and bring it about. And so I think the lesson here is stand firm because that's what Canada did. And in the end, President Trump decided to push these tariffs off by another month.
When we're looking at the domestic side of what's happening in Canada right now, we know that Justin Trudeau is still in office, but we are nearing the parliamentary elections. What are the leadership trends when it comes to the current ruling party ahead of the vote, which is supposed to be cast?
Yeah, so the election will happen sometime this year. We don't know exactly when. There is right now a process for selecting a new leader for the Liberal Party. That's Justin Trudeau's party. He said he will resign as Prime Minister as soon as there's a new leader to that party. And I think it's reasonable to expect that there would be a federal election shortly afterwards with the leader of that Liberal Party running against the opposition Conservatives. Right now, the opposition Conservatives are very far ahead in the polls, about 20 points. And so if there were an election held today, almost certainly the Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Canadian Conservative Party, would come to office. But interestingly, the fact that Donald Trump has leveled these threats against Canada's economy and sovereignty has really changed the politics of this upcoming election. And whereas there were many issues that were part of the public debate and almost certainly will be when we do get to our election, the number one issue now is who can best manage the threat of Donald Trump over the next 4 years. And all of the party leaders expressed support for retaliatory tariffs if Donald Trump imposes tariffs on Canada.
Thank you very much. Roland Paris, Professor of International Affairs at the University of Ottawa and former advisor to Canada's Prime Minister. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight, but please do stay tuned. We're back here on TVP World in just a moment with more news and features.